Chronicle, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Washington Times. Mr. Epstein has been interviewed on numerous nationally syndicated radio programs on business topics such as energy, income equality, pharmaceutical companies, and the moral defense of capitalism. And now take it away, Alex. Thank you.
Can I move this around? Let's find out. How's my sound?
Good.
All right, so we're here at UC Irvine. You have this random guy standing in front of the flagpole talking about, of all things, Ayn Rand Awareness Week. Now, probably on your list of important things to do in life, hearing about Ayn Rand Awareness Week was probably not on one of them when you woke up today. After all, you have your classes, you have your studies, you have your plans. And if you're going to hear about something, something kind of outside yourself, something in the world, shouldn't you be hearing about, well, the disasters that we're having all over the economy? And after all, I'm trying to not say that might be necessary at some point. After all, many of you, I would guess about a quarter, are going to be graduating soon. And the job market is just atrocious. If you were considering going on Wall Street, forget it. Unemployment is going up very quickly, approaching 10%. If you follow what the government's doing, no matter whether you agree with President Obama's policies or not, he's planning to spend trillions and trillions of dollars. And those are trillions of dollars that at some point, all of us, and especially you guys, the young ones, will have to pay back. So why are we focusing on Ayn Rand awareness? Well, because Ayn Rand was a philosopher. And believe it or not, philosophy is the most important topic we could possibly be thinking about today. Now, you can kind of think about philosophy if you're trying to solve a problem in the culture. If you ever watch that show on TV, House, there'll be all these different symptoms with a patient, and it might have 10 or 20 different symptoms. But it's never just that there are 10 or 20 little isolated problems. There's always something fundamental that explains the problems. And if you don't understand the fundamental, you can treat the symptoms all you want, you can respond to the symptoms all you want, but it's not going to do any good. And actually, whether you agree with President Obama or not on politics, and I think you'll come to find I don't agree with him on that many things, he makes a good point about philosophy. When he talks about the problems of the past, he points out that we have so many different problems today in so many sectors of the economy. It's not possible that we just got here by chance. It has to do something with our overall approach, with the overall way that we've been looking at our economy, at our lives. That's the only way that we could have so many problems. And so what we need to do is we need to think more carefully about what philosophy have we as Americans adopted? What overall views of life and about society have we adopted that got us to that point? And then we have to think about, well, are there better views out there? And this is what Ayn Rand Awareness Week is all about. It's about better views in philosophy, better views about how to live our lives and about how to live as a society. Now, as I mentioned, I think Obama is good. He points out, it's some kind of wrong philosophy that got us to this point. But unfortunately, he repeats the same line that's been repeated for decades and decades after every economic crisis that never changes anything about what caused it. Obama says, well, the key to all of our problems, the key cause are two things. One is greed, and that's what led people to do all of these bad things. And two is the free market, which allowed people to be greedy. So greed and the free market, or if you want to put it, selfishness and capitalism. Now, this should, even if you think there's some plausibility to this should be problematic. Because after all, isn't self-interest, isn't selfishness, isn't that crucial to what made America great? Isn't it crucial if you study economics? Isn't that part of the subject? Isn't that somehow vital to human life? So, and by the same token, did we really have a philosophy of selfishness? I mean, who was going around praising selfishness? Did George W. Bush ever say everyone should be selfish? Did he ever say there should be no government regulations? No. So is that really a coherent explanation? And we're going to talk about that more in a second. But what we're going to focus on today is Ayn Rand's view. How Ayn Rand's views, I should say, apply to today's crisis. Now, what's interesting is I'm talking about this philosopher named Ayn Rand, and yet she's been dead for 27 years. And I'm saying that if you want to understand today's crisis, you should listen to the writings of a dead woman. So how is that? Well, because the philosophical issues underlying our problems today, and especially the philosophical principles that can help give us the solution to those, are timeless. It's just like the principles of mathematics or physics. They don't change day to day. And because Ayn Rand really studied thoroughly the timeless principles of philosophy, she was able to write a book, Atlas Shrugged, that if you read it, very closely resembles the world of today. And that book, her novel, has become incredibly popular lately. At one point was, I think, #1 in the fiction section of Amazon, because people read it and they thought, holy, this is exactly like today. How did she do this? This book was written in 1957. That's 52 years ago. How is it possible? Well, it's possible if you really understand what ideas lead to good results in human life and what ideas lead to bad results in human life. So what I want to do is I want to take Ayn Rand, I want to take her ideas and her approach, and I want to look at the issue of what is responsible for today's crisis, and I want to look at the common explanation that it's the free market and that it's greed. Because in her, that was the explanation when she lived, and that is the explanation today. And she both refutes that and has a far superior explanation and a good alternative. So, listen to any politician speak. In the presidential campaign, you could have listened to McCain, you could have listened to Obama, you could fill in any politician in the blank. There was one phrase that kept coming up, and that explains supposedly all the problems today, all the problems that you and I have to deal with in the culture. And that is the free market failed. This was a failure of the free market. The free market unleashed all of these bad behaviors on Wall Street, and that is, it unleashed all of these complex securities, all of these bad loans, all of these bad borrowing practices. It was the free market that was responsible. And in Ayn Rand's time, for whatever problem there was, such as the Great Depression, no matter what the problem, it was always the free market is the problem. Now here's where it gets interesting, as with Ayn Rand as a philosopher. Most people would just, if they heard that and they didn't like it, they'd respond immediately, and they'd try to counterattack. Well, no, the free market is the solution. But no, what she did is she stepped back and she looked at it as a philosopher, and she said, well, we better make sure we're thinking clearly about what exactly is the free market. What do we mean when we say the free market? Because it would be as if an American and someone from England are talking about football, and they're having this big argument about football, and it turns out that one means American football and one means soccer. You're not going to get anything accomplished if you're not very clear on what your concepts are and what you're talking about. So with the free market, her first question would be, and she asked this with capitalism, which is in the same sphere. What is capitalism? What is the free market? And she observes, and this is true today, that in our culture, the free market, that terminology, is very vague and undefined and jumbled in terms of its meaning. For example, we think of the free market, if you just listen to the terminology, well, what does it mean? It means, well, the market is free. It's free of what? It's free of government interference. The government doesn't interfere in people's transactions, their interactions. It doesn't try to dictate market outcomes. So that's the free market, right? That's how we use it. But on the other hand, we use it to describe the market of the Bush administration. Now, the Bush administration repeatedly used the government to dictate market outcomes. It tried to shunt people into houses. It artificially lowered interest rates to